All right, it is Tuesday, September 21st, and we're going to look at the final project. I have a video where I talked about it, but I didn't actually start an example. Today we're going to say, here's what it would look like if you were to do it. Last time I did a video of some stuff for the functions in CodeHS, and this time we're going to use that. We're going to make a function in our project. So if you watched this video of a guy showing a little quiz template and you made the code, you would get this stuff. You don't have to type it. That's why I put this here, so you can just copy that. Because the project is not typing all this stuff. The project is fixing all this stuff, okay? So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to hit Control-A to select all. And then I'm going to hit Control-C to copy. If you're on Replit, by the way, you can make this on Replit or you can make it on CodeHS. They're both exactly the same. If you're on Replit, you can just hit like the fork option, and that's fine. But let's say you were going to go to CodeHS because that's what we're familiar with recently. That's what we've been using. I'm going to hit this. I'm going to hit run, and it's going to give me the stuff that the guy made in the video. Are you ready to play? Yes. What's the best programming language? We'll do one where we get it right, and we'll say Python. I will do one where we're getting wrong, and we'll say cheese. I don't remember what this was all about in this thing. I don't know. And it said, hey, you got 1 out of 4, 25. So this is the kind of thing we're doing. However, what I asked you to change was this thing is really repetitive and really inefficient. If you do one question, you don't want to have to copy all those and change a little bit and copy them again, because that's getting bigger and bigger. And if you wanted to change them, you'd have to change everyone, blah, blah, blah. You heard me talk about that last time. So we're going to make a function that is how to ask a question in general, and then we just run that 4 times or run it 40 times and make the efficiency work for us. Okay, so let's take the first one and copy it, but instead of pasting it down here for another, we're going to paste it up here for the way to do a question overall. The indenting sometimes gets messed up if you do that. I'm going to indent this guy once because when we make the top line here, all this stuff is going to need to be inside of it. When you make a function, you're going to use def, which means define, and then we're going to give it a name. I'm going to say pretty much 100%, you want your functions to be named with a verb at the beginning to say what they do. So I'm going to call it ask question. Okay, I don't just want to say question because that could be like a variable, you know, it could be all kinds of things. So you're going to have parentheses. We'll add stuff in there later. And then you're going to hit colon because you do colon when you're defining anything. Class, you know, the top of an if statement or a while loop or all kinds of things. You put a colon to say, hey, this next little chunk is under the umbrella of this guy. It's all in one piece. Okay. So now when we define ask question, we're going to say not how to ask this particular one with stuff in quotes, but how to ask the general kind of thing that you might do once, do twice, do 50 times, whatever. When you have a decision about what's going to go in these parentheses, you want to think about what's different each time. Okay? For example, this bottom half here is the same every time. If they end up with the right answer, it's going to add to the score and print correct. If they don't, it's going to say incorrect. So this stuff is going to be the same every time. None of this is going to make an appearance in the parameters, okay? But this stuff is, because each time it's going to ask a slightly different thing, and it's going to be looking for a slightly different answer. Okay, so this is the stuff that's going to need to go in the parentheses. This is the unique element, okay? So what is it? Basically the question and answer, right? The question is going to be in this part, and the answer is going to be in this part. Now, right away, that's a little bit ugly because I've got a variable called answer, and over here I've got one called ANS, and it would be extremely easy to mix those up, right? And distinguishing between the answer that the person tried and then the answer key that we're checking it against is extremely important. So we might say something like, okay, we're going to call this correct answer, so that if somebody glances at it, they'll know right away which is which. And then we might call this user answer or something. But let's go with this for now. And that means whenever you call up this function, it's going to do all this for you. You just have to tell it what is the thing we're asking and what is the thing we're looking for. So let's rewrite these to do that. So we're going to say, instead of all this, we're going to say ask question and look for this answer. Okay, isn't that lovely? It's nice and short, and we just say, here are the two things you need to plug in. Boom. Next one, we're going to ask for this guy and look for this answer. And get rid of all that. You can see that we're saving a lot of space. We told it how to do a question once, and now each of the times is only taking one line. So if we had 50 questions, it would save us a lot of lines, right? And this guy, let's bump this over. Boom, boom. And I'm going to stop here for a second for a few reasons. One is I want to hit run to see if it works, right? I don't want to change everything and then have to take a step backwards. But also this last one is a little bit different because it has the answer could be one thing or another thing. And we haven't built that into our function yet, so slow down on that. Now if I hit run, it's actually not going to work. There's one error that's going to come up, and we'll see that in a second. But let's try it. Okay, are you ready to play? Yes. What's the best Python? Well, we got an error, okay? It did this, and then it did this, and called up the function and did all the stuff, but it said, wait a minute, this variable right here, score, what's going on with it, okay? It's not going to know exactly what that means because they're calling it a local variable. Local variable means it's in the function and only in the function. When you use stuff within a function, you often have little variables that you use to get a value, calculate it, whatever, like the ANS right here. We get their input and then we use it the next line and then we never use it again. Functions are assuming that you're going to have little variables like that where you get it and you use it in the next line. And they're not accessible from outside. You know, these lines couldn't say something about ANS because that variable only exists in this little universe. And score is a little bit of an issue because it was created out here, and we want to have it extend its life throughout the whole program. We want it to say score has a value. We might add to it this time we run the function. We might add to it the next time we run the function, and we want to talk about the same score throughout the whole thing, not starting a new one each time. Okay, so that doesn't quite fit with the local variable idea that we learned in, if you go to Unit 6 in our code HS, right? When you saw that section about namespaces, and I think I showed an example from that last time, it said, hey, they're supposed to only exist in there. Yeah, I showed an example from this last time. It was this one. Now, I showed there were 3 ways to fix it in that example. And there are a couple ways to fix it in this one too. So one thing is we could have the function, just as it received some stuff, it received the question and answer to work with, it could spit out some stuff. It could use the function return, and it would return score, and then we could have the code out here do something with it, like take that and add it to a larger total. Or we could have another part of the program that just handles the score, and we could, like, whenever this thing calculates whether we're getting a point or not, then it would run another function, and it would run like the scoreboard function to add to a certain total, and then at the end we would ask that function, hey, how much have you got? How much have you been keeping track of this whole time? Or we can do a little cheap version that's not really recommended a lot of the time, but it does work, and it will work right now. You can say global score at the top of your function and say, hey, this variable out here, we're going to be using it, and we're going to make it count. So the stuff that we do with score is going to be talking about this guy from outside, and it's fine. Okay, that's not super clean code that everyone would like. Usually you want your functions to kind of have their own little self-contained world and not leak out into the cytoplasm, but it's okay for this quick version, and we might make a prettier one later. It's going to show that it works at least. So are you ready to play? Yes. What's the best programming language? Python. Let's do a wrong one. Bob. What's better? I don't know. Is that right? No. Okay, so we got 2 out of the 4, and we got a 50%. And we know that that works. The score inside of here and the score over here are talking about the same thing because we use this line right here. And now we have an issue of, hey, this one doesn't work the same as the others. It's got 2 possible answers. So now it gets interesting. You don't have to do this, by the way. You don't have to make a question that has 2 possible answers. Because remember, you're not using the questions that this guy made. You're making your own to ask about whatever you want to ask about. But if you did, we would have to add something in here. We would have to add like another parameter, like secondary answer, blah, blah, blah. And if you were in Unit 6, you would see there's one lesson about how to make optional ones that people don't need, and it'll have a default if they don't put anything. So you could get into that. I don't want to keep this video super long. I want to make it simple, so I won't show that. But my first recommendation would just be don't do one that has 2 answers. But if you wanted to, you could. And the great thing about that is that you would add it once to the definition, and then you can use that whenever. You could make them all have 2 answers if you added that. If you add some other stuff later, then it automatically filters through and does it here, here, and here, and you don't have to go back and change multiple things. So that's how you would start this project. You make the question function once, and then you call it up, boom, 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 as many times as you want. And these guys are a lot shorter now, and they're guaranteed to be identical and consistent, whereas if you had the same code copy, who knows, maybe you changed one and forgot or something. So this thing right now does the same thing in fewer lines, and once we get better, it's going to do even more in even fewer lines. I will end this video now because I want to do sort of one step at a time, and then next one I'll show how you might do this sort of error handling thing. We'll add a little bit in here that says, hey, if they put in the wrong kind of stuff, we're going to handle it instead of crashing, and then go all the way to the end. If you are working on this today, that's wonderful. If you're still on the previous thing, we can handle it. I'm going to look at some deck of cards projects today. I think I have most of them turned in, but not all. And we have 2 A-days this week, 2 A-days next week, 1 e-learning at the end. But please don't plan to do any of your work on the e-learning at the end, because it's hard for you to finish it and turn it in. It's hard for me to grade it all at the last minute. That would be no fun. So I will, from now to then, post updates and tips and maybe some recap stuff for people who are behind, and we will be totally fine. If you ever want to come in during Impact, that's fine too. Just let me know.